Welcome to the Armstrong Getty Show. Glad you've joined us today.
And look who else has joined us. Craig, the Obamacare expert, the Obamacare lawyer, noted stunt mountain biker, Craig Gottwals.
Good morning, guys.
How's your shoulder, sir?
My shoulder as well. Good. No surgery. Be good to go in about 2-3 weeks.
You may recall the story. Craig and I went mountain biking with Rich, the bass player from the Dead Flowers, and Craig almost killed himself.
How old are you?
Even though he's by far the best biker among us.
How old are you?
I am 40.
Yeah, you're exactly 40. Well, it's interesting. Perfect, then, because you said you'll be good to go in about 2-3 weeks. I remember when I turned 40 a couple years ago, and somebody said turning 40 is the point at which your life, you'll say, I'll be back to normal in a couple of weeks for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's right.
You always have something wrong, and you always think, as soon as I get over this little thing with my foot, my knee, my cold, my neck, whatever it is, I'll be back to normal.
I'll be 100%.
And you just never are.
Welcome, my friend, welcome.
Yeah, well, luckily nothing was broken, just a couple torn ligaments and a separation and no surgery. That was the key.
Yeah. I've had friends who are a little older than me tell me, if you can avoid the knife, I don't care what they promise you, I don't care, just avoid the knife at all costs. Yeah. Anyway, obviously there are exceptions. Do not listen to the Armstrong and Getty Show for medical advice, because if you do, you're stupid. Now, let's talk about Obamacare first. Big announcement. Again, this week, or last several days, would have been headline news for days 3 months ago when everybody was paying attention.
Yeah, we've got Obamacare fatigue as a society, don't we?
Yeah, and it's troubling, but it's a fact. And it's a factor in the political momentum of dealing with this stuff.
So what's the big story, and what does it mean?
Well, this week, and I like to start this story with a quote from Abraham Lincoln, where Abraham Lincoln, which was President Obama's favorite president, said, "The best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly." This week, President Obama changed Obamacare the 32nd time.
Oh, I see your point. So the best way to preserve a terrible law is to not enforce it at all, when inconvenient.
Change it at will, yeah.
I see.
And, or you could look at this and say, well, he's changing it so much that effectively he's going to repeal it by himself at this point. I mean, it's a little bit absurd, but what he did this week was, again, by majestic proclamation, all of the formerly so-called junk insurance plans that we were not supposed to have.
Substandard. The
substandard junk plans have, and I had to write this down because I think this is how you would say it now. They've been ReDeUnGrandfathered. ReDeUnGrandfathered. And that means they've been reinstated, okay? Right. And not only have they been reinstated, but they've been reinstated for at least 2 years, probably 3, because if you are an individual or a small group, in California, a small group less than 50 employers, you can renew that plan according to President Obama, but not according to the state of California. That's a whole other problem. Oh. Anytime prior to 10/1/2016, and that'd be a 1-year renewal. So you could actually have this plan, this substandard bad plan that we were being saved from, all the way until 9/30/2017.
Let me quote the editorial board of the New York Times, which is left of Trotsky.
No, they're right-wingers, aren't they?
I don't think so. A quote, "The move is designed to provide political cover for Democratic senators facing tough re-election campaigns."
Oh, I don't believe that at all. Our president wouldn't provide political cover with necessary health care.
Yeah, well, so there you have it. So those awful plans are now going to be okay for years.
Yeah, that's the headline, Joe. But there's 3 other things that were done this week that were cemented in final regulations we need to hit. One of them was, and we talked about this here months ago, they finalized the rule that says insurers will get taxpayer dollars more quickly. The bailout terms have been sweetened, and that was finalized this week. You want to call it a kickback to unions. It's large, self-funded, self-administered plans, of which most are unions, are not going to have to pay a particular tax within Obamacare for 2 of the 3 years that tax is administered. That was finalized. And last but not least, my favorite one, Obamacare does command that you provide dental care to children if you are a small employer or an individual, but not a large employer. Go figure. I guess if you're a kid and your dad works at a large employer, you don't need dental care.
Well, I'm sorry. In this person with the kid, did they bribe the Democratic Party?
I don't know.
Because that's the question.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But what they did is they put price controls on the cost of those dental plans for individuals and small groups. Again, if you're an employer over 50, you don't even have to buy dental coverage. But if you're under 50, you do.
What the hell?
How does this affect the financing of the thing? Like the moving the bad insurance plans, the substandards, back a couple of years.
Well, and feel free to throw in like the cancellation of the small employer mandate and soon the individual mandate.
Right. Those were changes that occurred in the middle of February where they moved back the employer mandate again for mid-sized businesses. They also watered it down for large businesses. And to answer your question, Jack, it makes the finance of the law worse because these people that are going to be renewing the individual plans, in theory and logic, were people that had individual plans, which means they were healthy, which means they won't be going into the exchange, which means more taxpayer dollars to fund poorer risk in the exchanges. It absolutely hurts the risk pool.
Okay, well, that gets to what I think my point has been for quite a while in the Obamacare thing. Clearly, the goal is for the thing not to work, with the idea that if it falls apart, it's not going to fall apart in such a way that we go back to the old way or something even more free market. We're going to go the direction of single payer, which is what they wanted all along.
Well, and
they'll be happy if it doesn't work.
To bring it all together, all these cancellations of mandates, these loosening of rules to get past the election, et cetera, that is making the enormous bailout of the insurance companies a certainty. The numbers cannot work. So the insurance companies will need enormous bailouts. That is practically guaranteed at this point. Am I wrong?
No, it's a certainty, and it's so bad that the administration claims, and again, the math on this does not add up, but the administration now claims that the bailouts are actually going to somehow, some way be revenue neutral for the country. And I guess the logic is, because we're going to take these people and actually provide them insurance when they didn't have insurance and they were hitting ER rooms, et cetera, They've cobbled together some financial argument that the bailouts themselves are revenue neutral.
Well, I'll be interested to see what the CBO says about that when we get far enough that they have any numbers they can plug in. This is did you see? A couple of weeks ago they released a bunch of papers from the Clinton library, and people were pouring through them, seeing if there was anything in there that would damage Hillary when she's running for president. And there's like 75 million documents or something. But in the thousands of documents that they did release, it went back to when she tried to get Hillary Care going, similar to what Obamacare was happening. And did you hear about this, where they were having discussions before Bill Clinton's State of the Union address, and their conclusion was, we cannot go out, because they were going to make the claim, if you like your doctor, if you like your health care, you can keep it. Mm-hmm. They were going to say that, and they decided, we can't do that. We know it's a lie. It's going too far, and it'll come back to bite us. Hillary and Bill figured that out when they launched theirs.
Just shows what 15 years does in politics.
We're 15 years down the road to cynical, like we were talking about, the life cycle of empire.
But what I'm wondering is, maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were overly cautious, because I'm not sure this whole, if you like your health care thing, you can keep it thing is gonna end up biting them. It's getting spread out over so much time. The Obamacare fatigue, attention span. I mean, God, are we going to be able to get people worked up about this in 2 years?
It's really bad, Jack. I work with a group of attorneys that does nothing but work on this law for the most part, and we're all getting fatigued. I mean, it's to the point where our conference calls meander into bike rides and so forth, because we can't stay focused, let alone get our clients to stay focused. I now go out and tell my clients, and I say, look, the early bird does not get the worm in this deal. You got to be as late as you can to comply, because they're going to change it. So don't be an early adapter.
Well, after a couple of times, I got to think, I'm not going to pull an all-nighter for 3 days to try to figure out the economics of this and our plan and get all the paperwork in order just so that I have to redo it again in a week. I'm going to wait until this all dust settles.
And a special message for those listeners who are unemployed or underemployed: for businesses to grow, the one thing they need is a fair amount of certainty as to what the numbers are going to be next year. And that's what they're being denied. And if you don't quite get the connection between this sort of policies and your unemployment, well, I don't know, get a copy of Money Magazine or get an Econ 101 book or something like that. Craig, the Obamacare expert, is with us. Craig, I need to point out a big new poll out, McKinsey & Company. Only 1/4 of the people who've signed up for health care through the federal and state exchanges didn't have health care already. Only 1/4. And, of course, this thing was all sold on the basis of the 20, 30, 40, however many million people didn't have insurance. So it's 1/4 of the signups are those people, and only 1 in 10 of people without insurance said they had any intention of signing up.
Right, they don't care. Gallup came out with a poll yesterday where only 17% of Democrats said that Obamacare would help them.
Wow.
And it was much less for independents and Republicans, obviously. 17% of Democrats said Obamacare would help them. Back to your point, Joe.
That is astounding.
It is. And back to your point, Joe, the CBO itself, which came out with a huge report in early February on the next 10 years of our economy, said that, okay, when Obamacare passed, we had 45 million uninsured. At the end of 10 years, all the way out in 2014, we're going to have 31 million uninsured. That is only a 4.5% reduction in the amount of the uninsured based on our population size for this huge boondoggle of a law that is
why did we do
crushing us.
That is crushing the economic growth. God, that's unbelievable. Real quick, there are legal rumblings afoot, challenges. What should we know?
So I've had, I think, 2 different conversations now with Congressman McClintock on this topic, and he first mentioned it to me back in November, and it was brilliant, and I had to noodle it for a few months before it really sunk into my thick skull. Basically, he said it in a public forum this week, so I'm comfortable saying it publicly now. He said, look, all of these proclamations that the president is making are irrelevant because what matters is a statute. So what the GOP is basically looking for now and waiting for is a group of plaintiffs, whether they be people or employers, who are directly hurt by one of these extensions, could be an insurance company too, who would sue in a court of law saying, irrespective of what the president said, the statute is what controls, and we're suing to enforce the statute. Because what the president has said all along is the government's not going to enforce A, B, C, and D. That's fine. The government can choose to not enforce things. But if it hurts an individual and an individual sues in a court of law, that can overcome these proclamations, which will not hold up to a statute.
But how long would that take to work its way through the system?
It's going to take a while, and it's tough to find the right plaintiffs, and that's why I've been noodling it over for months. But Representative McClintock's absolutely right that the statute has control. And so he'll say on a conference call to constituents, for example, whatever the president said this week doesn't matter because it's not law. Well, it's not law, but I can assure you I have employers and clients relying on it. And so you've just got this huge mess out there, like, without certainty, as you said.
Wow. I wish we could somehow force people to keep paying attention and stay interested.
The future of controlling politics is going to be people who understand the attention span and the modern media. That is going to be the winning political party.
I think the best we've seen is Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Up until now that he's actually accomplished anything, because I heard it pointed out, he's none of his big deals has happened except Obamacare. None of his big programs, none of the things he said he was running on has happened except for Obamacare, and it's a debacle. But in terms of getting people's attention, getting their support, he's brilliant, and we're paying the price.
You better be able to break your politics into Twitter feeds.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely, if you want to win.
So, and finally this, you called me a precipussy because I didn't like to ride my mountain bike fast by cliff sides?
Yeah.
And I understand you've gotten your comeuppance.
I got a little payback. About 3 days after we had our accident, I had a meeting with a professional ex-NHL hockey player, really rugged guy, 18 years in the league, gold medalist, super tough fella, and a professional fisherman who owns a fishing company. And no, this isn't like whippy fly rods, Jack. This would be like Deadliest Catch style. So we had a meeting, and they're looking at my arm, and actually the fisherman had heard the radio show and said, so what happened to your chicken wing over there? As I'm in a sling, and I said, well, and I started to explain the story, and I didn't get past grade 2 separation when the NHL hockey player chimed in and said, grade 2? Grade 2? You're going to be just fine, lawyer boy. You're not going to need surgery. And the fisherman's back there laughing and bellowing, and he's like a grizzly bear with a human face, this big, tough guy who's had 4 shoulder surgeries, right. And he says, yeah, maybe we ought to put some training wheels on Lawyer Boy's bicycle before he goes out next time.
Boy, don't tell a guy who's in the NHL for 18 years, I have an owie. Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah.
They asked. Funny. I was trying to avoid it. It was the damn sling. I couldn't avoid it.
Funny.
Yeah.
Craig, the Obamacare expert, if you need his wise counsel, advice, etc., we've got a link at ArmstrongandGettyRadio.com. You can get in touch. This is what he does for a living,